All right. Hello, everyone. We are back with Overall Fit for Life podcasts. Starting the new year, 2024. This will be our Happy New Year to you, even though it's 7 days into the new year. So, hope everybody's having a good first week of 2024. And today we are going to talk about boundaries. A lot to go with that. So,
Mhm.
I'm going to let Sinclair Stenson start it off and get us going so we can get to talking about boundaries.
Yeah, so I wanted to choose this. It was between this topic or self-love, but also like I just feel like this is a good topic just for the beginning of the month and like for the new year because boundaries, I feel like I never really understood boundaries because I'm an empath, so like I care too much. So like whatever it is that someone's going through, I feel like okay, I'll just stop what I'm doing, what I have, and then let that issue or person kind of like let them have the floor. And I realized that necessarily a boundary isn't a bad thing. A boundary is just so you can keep your peace of mind because instead of like letting it go and like there's a lot of things and juggling everything and then on top of that someone else's stuff that they are appointing to you now, it's like a lot to handle. And so what I wanted to first say is that I guess a question. I want to ask you a question. I feel
Mhm.
like that helps more things, come from that conversational wise. But I was gonna ask you, do you have boundaries or do you have trouble in placing boundaries like in your like life, like in every like aspect? It doesn't have to be like just relationship wise. It could be like anything. Like, yeah.
I I do have in certain areas have problems with boundaries,
Mhm.
and I think that is generally just because, let's say, for instance, in my personal training business,
Mhm.
it's hard to set boundaries at times because of the need for clientele for the business to grow.
Yeah.
So if I start out with a boundary that I'm closing off all business so that I can spend family time at a certain time, that may affect the ability for someone to come on as a client, because if I am shut off at that time, but they need that time, then it gets kind of hard. So I have to be open with boundaries in some aspects of my life,
Mhm.
and that can be very challenging because
Mhm.
where do you draw the line? When do you say enough is enough? And
Mhm.
that is in personal relationships, business relationships, just every aspect of life. Um,
Yeah.
I find in my personal relationships, I have really good boundaries. Does not take much for me to put a stop to something that I'm not comfortable with or something that affects my peace. I
Yeah.
can generally, in my personal life, say, okay, I'm cutting this person off for a certain period of time, or I'm going to have a conversation with them so that they understand my feelings and we can
Mhm.
kind of mend it from there.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I think when I was kind of making that growth aspect of like, hey, like how do I like maintain my boundaries? And the more that I kept being on top of it, the more it became easier because I kind of felt bad that I was having boundaries and I didn't know how to balance how much I'm giving my time to things like having, giving being that person that gives out advice and whatnot. I felt like I wasn't placing boundaries for my own personal life of things. Like I have a lot going on, so I feel like sometimes people don't stop me like, hey, like before I trouble you with all my problems, can you handle all this? Because you don't realize that like they have things going on too. And
Mm-hmm.
so the boundaries I had to realize I might not be able to respond right away, or maybe I might respond the next day. Like I might not respond as fast as you want me to. And if it becomes a problem, like I don't know, I'm human, right? Like, and just
Mm-hmm.
I had friendships like that. And I have my phone on do not disturb. Like that's a boundary I have just because it's not saying I get distracted. It just I don't want to like look at my phone
Mm-hmm.
And I had to put a boundary like, okay, well, if it was a problem that I'm on my notifications are do not disturb, like it was just like if we have to argue about that, that's kind of weird, you know? It just
Mm-hmm.
stinks. I started seeing that I'm taking time for myself and it started to become a problem for other people how they're looking at it. And I feel like boundaries too, again, is to help your like well-being, and it's just like things can get chaotic and your boundaries, for example, I have a boundary where and I'm speaking about my like season in my life, like where I'm at and all that. I can speak on this. Even like I'm single. I've been single for like 2.5 years. So my boundaries as I'm getting older is that I know social media has a lot of different things that people share around and all that. And I realize the more I take care of myself, the more like value I have, and I look in the mirror like this woman that I am, is that I don't have to settle on things. I can have standards. I can keep those boundaries, and it's not a problem to someone that has respect for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's a problem if someone doesn't respect you. I'm like, oh, like just seeing that kind of made me see more of like um the options I'm choosing from, the who has my like who's giving my energy, like my I started to see the boundaries even like for a friendship, for example. I won't say names or whatever, but we fell out because I didn't have boundaries that I could have addressed a long time ago, meaning being the single friend and being around other people that are in the relationships mode and all that. I felt like I wanted to speak on things because I was around it and it was happening like in my presence. So like I just kept things like under the rug until it became a situation where like, you know what, I got tired of it. So like I'm going to speak about things that been happening when I'm around. And so more of the stories that I could have had a better boundary system, meaning I could have maybe not went to that function or like that going out with a group of people that are in relationships, because I'm the person, I don't have one, like I have a significant other, but I felt like I needed to have a significant other just because they have one. So I didn't have that boundary, like, you know what, like I actually really didn't want to go out. I wanted to go out because it was like they wanted me to go because that was the only scene, like our friendship was just based off going out way. So I didn't have a boundary where like, hey, like, well, if we remove that, what is our friendship then? And so having that fallout and having a boundary, like, you know what, like we're not going to be friends for a little bit. I'm not going to be texting for a while. It was like probably like a month or whatever too, and realize we had other things we need to figure out for ourselves. And so I just was feeling better. Like I didn't feel like the strain of like the drama with what they got going on, their significant other and all their issues. I just felt like I wasn't a part of it no more because I took the time away. And so now I see how I handle it now, like going into those type of environments. Of course I can't control arguments, whatever, with other people. And it just made a better system where like I don't have to always go to things that I'm invited to. It's okay to say no. I have a boundary where like I don't feel bad saying no no more.
Right.
It's okay to like not have to like show up every single thing you're invited to, or people that expect you to be there. Like I don't have to though. So
Right.
it became a better feeling. Like I felt better peacefully having
Mm-hmm.
that and just standing. It's kind of like you're standing up for yourself. You're
Mm-hmm.
voicing, you're expressing how you feel, and now you're able to like feel better the fact that okay, like, well, that person, are they creating a problem now with you because you're voicing now, or they're like symptomatic, like okay, like cool, like I see what you're saying, I respect that, and like so on, like so I realize that boundaries, it's not to cause conflict, it's to cause peace. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's to cause like understanding.
Mm-hmm.
It's not supposed to cause drama. It's like just having an equal balance between two people or a group or whatever it is, that it is at the boundary. And so then you don't feel bad later on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
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 All right, that was number one. Like,
No, that's fine. Yeah, it was great. I mean, I think you hit it right on the head when you said boundaries are supposed to create peace.
yeah.
They shouldn't create conflict.
Mhm.
But what do we do when they do create conflict?
Mhm.
Then affects how we set boundaries as well.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at it from a relationship standpoint, if you have a boundary, person knows that, say they have a specific stance on communicating with the opposite sex. They don't like it. They feel it's cheating. Don't care if
Mm-hmm.
you've been friends. This is what it is. And that boundary is then crossed,
Yeah.
creates a conflict.
Mm-hmm.
But if that person then says, oh, okay, I'm going to let it go this time, then you then destroyed the boundary that you set. So then, is it a boundary anymore? If it's an understanding that there's a boundary in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
that boundary is then broken, but you let it slide,
Mm-hmm.
then is it a boundary anymore? Can you say it's a boundary anymore? That that's where I think a lot of people kind of get confused on boundaries. Is where do you draw the line? Because it's going to create it can create conflict, but that does not mean that it's bad. If it creates conflict with an individual, then you may just need to address the relationship with the individual, not the boundary itself. Versus if it creates peace, then you know that the boundary is good, but the relationship is also good on the other hand.
Yeah, I think the boundary part, to make it easier for people to understand, a boundary is something like, okay, for example, um, let's say I go on this date with someone. Well, I'm going to meet up with that person. I have a boundary where, like, I'm not going to allow someone to come pick me up. Like, that's a boundary,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's something
Right,
that that's what it is. I
right.
set that tone for not just that person, it's for anyone.
Yes.
So again, like that, I'm communicating that to you. I'm
Mm-hmm.
communicating that to you. It's not like I didn't tell you. So as long
Right.
as that, okay, cool. Like, I feel like I was reading this book. It's like called Good Boundaries and Goodbyes. Like healthy, I mean, all right, we're constantly like growing, I guess. Like healthy
Mm-hmm.
people, like so someone that is a good mindset, that's understanding that isn't going to make someone feel bad about that.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like someone that has issues going on where they can't respect another person, well, like they're not going to just like disrespect you. They're going to disrespect anyone else that has boundaries they come across. So like
Mm-hmm.
you're not the problem. They're the
Right.
problem.
Right.
Again, you can remove yourself immediately. Like, because if someone
Mm-hmm.
makes you feel bad about something that you have a very strong hold on, that's giving you like, all right, well, see you later, instead of
Mm-hmm.
having to cause argument. Now, I'm speaking about that, like I'm just talking about like someone you just met maybe, but when it comes to like family and friends, like I had this too where I was always monkey in the middle with family members, and I'm hearing that person talk, and then in this ear someone else, and they just won't come together and talk it out with the two people that have a problem with one another. But I was sitting in the middle of it. It became exhausting to me. It became exhausting, and like that energy just messed up my like just way of life. It felt like it became
Mm-hmm.
too much. So I have a boundary where like whoever wants to call me and all that, I'm not going to sit on the phone and like hear all that drama and stuff, because I was already doing something that had nothing to do with that. But
Mm-hmm.
now I allow that to come into my life. So I put boundaries where like, hey, like whenever the conversation starts getting negative, oop, I cut it off very fast. They
Mm-hmm.
might think I'm interrupting or cutting them off, or I don't care to hear what they have to say. No, it's the same thing we're talking about, and there's no solution. So I have a boundary where talk to me when you guys have something different to talk about, not the
Right.
same thing. So again, I became very open and I expressed myself how I felt. I'm not going to avoid how I really feel, because the more I keep doing that, the more things are just going to keep piling up. And that's
Mm-hmm.
not fair, because again, that's not my issue. I'm allowing an issue to be an issue where why did I even do that in the first place?
Right.
So again, it's standing up for the things that you truly believe in. Like if you want to live in a crazy running around like negative life, like the choice is yours. I don't want to do that, because I don't want to live like I don't want to live life like that. So if I don't have boundaries on certain things, then I have more of a structure in my life. I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to be like acting like things getting crazy in my life. No, I want to handle what I can't control, but I'm not going to handle things I don't really need to control or even have a desire to like try to. That's out
Mm-hmm.
of my reach. That's not my responsibility. My responsibility is making sure I'm good, what I can control, what I have the ability to choose to continue, like, moving forward, or what I don't have to allow myself to deal with. And that's where the goodbye starts. Now, if it's like repeated conversations, the same things over and over, like at this point, what are you supposed to do? Like
Mm-hmm.
at that point, that's a healthy goodbye. You did everything that you could possibly do. If that person can't understand a boundary or things aren't working out, then that's where people aren't meant in your life. Like that's where like this the saying where everyone's not supposed to like continue to like hold on, I don't remember what I was gonna say. Everyone's not supposed to like be a part of what you got going on. Some people are in like seasons. That's
Mm-hmm.
what I'm trying to say. Is that's where sometimes people are there in your life for only a season. It's not a bad thing. Like if everyone was supposed to be in your life, well, that would be a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, like that's just what it is. Things happen, life comes and goes, changes, things, appear. And I just think that I rather have people around me that have boundaries for themselves. That
Mm-hmm.
shows me how much responsibility they have in their life. And because I don't want someone to try to push me over, or like my friends or family, just, they have boundaries too. Like there's just things, whatever they have going on, I see that as a good thing, not a bad thing of a boundary.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think it really is important, like you said, that if you establish your boundaries
Mm,
and then you attract people that have boundaries, like you said, it gives a more cohesiveness and a peacefulness in a relationship. You're also feel like you're on that same plane where we're growing together. As we
mm,
set boundaries, I understand yours, you understand mine. We're going to grow together.
yeah.
Uh, I actually had a put a quote together this morning,
Mhm,
and I think there's two type of people that come into your life. There are storms and there's blessings. Storms are going to come in, and it may be chaotic. It may create pain, may create damage, but they're going to pass on at some point. They're not there to stay. They're only going to stay as long as you allow them to stay. And I thought about that as we were
mhm.
going to talk about boundaries, because the more pain, the more destruction they cause, eventually you're going to put that perimeter and say, look, I can't do it anymore. I'm done. And then they'll pass on. They won't fight to stay.
Yeah.
Then on the other hand, you have blessings. You have people that come into your life and you know immediately this person, whether they stay for a month or they're there for the rest of your life, they will come into your life at a certain point to where they are a blessing. They're going to help you grow. They're going to help you be better than you were. And
Absolutely.
I think the boundary part of that is what creates those type of relationships. If you
Mhm.
don't have boundaries, it's kind of hard to tell who's the storm and who's the blessing, because you're just allowing everything in all at once.
Yeah, and boundaries do help dictate like who you have around your circle. And also it helps you not to like have other people's opinions or expectations run your own life. Think
Mm-hmm.
about it. If I don't have boundary, I'm letting whoever say anything or whatever goes on let slide. Like I just think that no one can really handle that. I mean, you can try, but you will probably just want to like lash out, meaning like you're just like, I'm sick of this. Like, that's what I'm saying is that because people will have their opinions, people are going to voice their issues, their desires, their expectations on you. But that doesn't mean someone's opinion, someone's feelings if that's not something that you're okay with, you don't have to be okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
And it just helps you from letting yourself like being exhausted. Because I think
Yeah.
that being a people's person too, I feel like I was like exhausted a lot. So sometimes I'm trying to give an example. When I was doing people's resumes, like helping them, it showed me awareness like, wow, I didn't think that it was I didn't think resumes were difficult for people because I'm good at it, but also I was getting a lot of requests, and I had to put a boundary where, like, you know what? I did someone's resume for free, and I was like, wait, I actually did this, and I was hearing other people. I was looking at people's rates and stuff, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they charge a person like $200, and I was like, I gotta put a boundary of being really nice, and like I have to like pay, like I have to like set a price out, and then I got more people asking me to do theirs, and I just was like, hey, like you have to pay this, so like because they see me as being a nice person, and I'm just giving and I'll do anything, whatever. And I was like, but if I don't put a boundary on this, like I'm gonna like end up after doing them like, wow, like they just not saying use me, but they could have. I don't know their intentions, but it's not helping me though. Like, cause I still have things I want to do. That's not. I already have a resume done. I have goals I want to do. I could put that energy. So like, I had to like put that boundary where like I can't always be this like kind person and like be a blessing for someone else. Cause of course I would be a blessing for anyone, but I had to like put a boundary on that in a way, and it was hard, but I did it, and I'm glad I did it because it made me feel better about myself. Like, okay, like it showed me that I have more respect for myself and that I'm good at this thing. So why am I not allowing myself to get paid for something that I'm good at? So I can keep getting myself in the mentality. So the other skill sets and like publishing the book, I had to like go up a higher price. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go cheap because I know things are hard. People are struggling. But also I was like, but the process behind that is not easy. And so if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. Not everyone's doing that. And so I was like, you know what, I have a boundary where like, you know, I can't just allow myself to even have the like thought of like being too kind. Like it was a boundary I have on myself that I had to do. Like Sinclair, like, you know, you gotta get in like, you know, get out of the kindness mode for a second, realize like if you allow yourself to go less, you're not gonna get far at all anymore. You know, no matter how hard things are, because I'm still showing up for myself. I'm still doing the things. And I know there are people out there like me that are doing the same thing, but they didn't like go cheaper on their price. You know, like even like the stuff going on, the economy thing, it didn't get cheaper. It still remained that, or even much higher. So again, it's allowing yourself that you might have boundaries on people. I don't know, whoever, family, friends, but I had to put a boundary on myself. Like, hey, like am I going to keep allowing myself to still stay the same because I'm not trying to improve, meaning like I got to like not be so kind so I can get further because I was getting frustrated where like I didn't see any more result because I was just being that helping hand. You can still be a good person and still like give yourself respect for what you deserve, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was thinking about that earlier.
Mhm.
We had a really good conversation last year about emotional health
Mhm.
and something that I had never even really thought about. I'm always thinking about physical and mental health, but emotional health is not something I really thought about.
Mhm.
But in thinking about boundaries and just listening to what you said, the boundaries we place on ourselves improve our emotional health. As a business owner myself, I'm always contemplating, man, are my rates too high?
Mm,
Am I
yeah.
am I too expensive? And then you have to come back to that thought process, put that boundary, and say, hold
Mhm.
on, I show up every day. I put the
Mhm.
work in. I work after hours. You know, they pay me for a certain time, but I'm at home thinking, how can I improve this? What can I work on here? I put in more work than they actually see.
Mhm.
So yes, I'm worth that.
Yeah.
And understanding that you're worth that and telling yourself or keep it and continuously reminding yourself that you're worth that helps you emotionally because then you don't doubt, oh well, if this person don't want my service, then they just don't want my services. It has nothing to do with
Yeah.
me. And
Exactly.
I think that's really an important aspect of boundaries.
Mhm. Yeah, going back to like talking about business mode, when I my first book it was like $11. This book it's $25 because I had to do a whole different process and it I was stressing out, but I already knew what came with that. So it was kind of double the stress, but it was worth it. I'm like, I was talking to my friend. I'm like, I think I'm gonna like set this price. I was writing it down on a note card, and I was like, give me your opinion. I have friends that are gonna be the honest opinion. That's why I want people that will tell me how it is, like what they feel. She's like, no, you gotta go higher. I'm like, you know what? I do. And I was like, I've been stressing, I've been crying and all that, and it's not easy again. And so I pulled my report and I was like, oh shoot, when I first my first book, in a month it hit like in 2 weeks, like 30 books were gone. And this report I made, I was like, interesting, because the amount of books that I've sold, nowhere near my first book. I increased the price. So I
Mhm.
was, I kind of was in my feelings, not really necessarily because it's not the money for me.
Mhm.
But I knew who bought based off the report.
Mhm.
So I was like, okay. And then I've also had people saying they're gonna buy whatever. And so I had to realize that everyone isn't going to understand your price, but the right people and crowd will respect that price, because when
Mhm.
they get your service, when they open that book, whenever, if they are being your client now, like they're going to see like, I needed that service, because like what you do, like it pays off. You
Mhm.
wouldn't be doing something if it doesn't pay off. I mean, after a while it wouldn't like be a consistent thing, because you wouldn't even believe in it. Your vision wouldn't make sense, because it would, you're still going with it because it makes sense. And
Mhm.
so like what you just said, that like you kind of get in your own head like, should I like decrease that? But then it's like you went already from when you first started the business or whatever it is, like publish the book. You already started somewhere and you were doing it. You're doing it much more different, um, and so you're up leveling. So you can't keep going backwards or downwards. You got to keep going further, right? So again,
Right.
it's not bad that I don't know, just when you believe in what you have, you can only like upgrade yourself,
Mhm.
because other people around you aren't going to upgrade you. It first starts with you upgrading yourself before other
Right.
people like catch on, like, oh shoot, like, yeah, I feel that. I see what they're doing. So it speaks for itself. So that's why I was like, I'm not gonna, you know, feel bad about it. So I'm like, I'm gonna put a boundary on myself and realize, hey, like I gotta remember, like this is life too. Like, yes, I can be a people's person, but like this is life too. All the other, companies and CEOs and business owners, like they have that mentality too. So like, you know what? I'm gonna be about that as well, because it's exhausting having to like, like the emotional health. It's like I don't want to keep feeling like I'm feeling bad when I shouldn't be feeling bad, and like I don't want to go through that. So
Mhm.
at the end of the day, like I'm gonna charge for what I believe in and like my worth. If I didn't believe in it, or I felt like my worth wasn't good enough, the prices and all that would be very low, you
Mhm.
know.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so yeah, it's like your passion, like like this isn't anything to play around with.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the boundary, I never thought of it as a boundary. I never put that into
Hmm.
perspective, but it is. I mean, it's
Yeah.
something that you're saying that if if I provide this service and it's
Mhm.
less than I feel that it's worth, then that's going to affect how I feel. And it's going to affect my passion. It's going to affect my willingness to continue to do it and my peace. So you have to set that boundary. And like you said, the people who get it and understand it
Mhm.
will then come to you and say, yes, I understand. I understand exactly why you're doing this. And I still want to take this journey with you. And I think that is the importance of boundaries in every aspect of our lives. But really, for an individual, you have to create your own boundaries before you can get into a relationship, before you can strive to that business venture or write that book, or there has to be a boundary set because there's always going to have be somebody with an opinion. Like you said, somebody's always going to have an opinion. Um,
Gosh,
I
yeah.
found
Mhm.
I found that a lot of my when I first started this
Mhm.
personal training business, in my head, I'm thinking, oh man, there's all my friends. They're going to be there to support. They're going to be there. They're going to share everything.
Yeah.
They're going to be in my corner, and it wasn't like that. It's not like that at all. You
Mhm.
have the people that truly support you, and then you have people that you have known for years that are too busy or don't understand and just don't have the willingness to do that.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that boundary that says no matter what the opinion is, no matter what anybody says, I'm doing this because I'm passionate about it, I want to do it, it can really affect the peacefulness of striving to do whatever you're trying to do.
Yeah. Um, that's why when I was telling you earlier, because I didn't communicate this, I actually just like realized I'm gonna like make this boundary of mine just like a couple hours ago about the detox on social media.
Mm-hmm.
When I was realizing I have a lot of people like DM me their, I don't know where it was, people that act like they know me and they didn't, and would just say kind of like a lot of like hurtful things. But
Mm-hmm.
also I realized that that's social media. Everybody gonna have something to say, and they don't even know who you are, what you got going on, or what you're talking about. And I was like, I want to start this year off differently than I've ever done before, because I'm usually on social media because I'm voicing out like my voice. Like I don't know, I'm always talking about things. I have that like platform and
Mm-hmm.
like writing, and I'm like just sharing good things that I feel like it does speak volumes on. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking this cleanse because I think it's gonna help me really moving forward for the rest of the year, like spending more time being mindful, like, you know what, it's going to help me like turn off social media, and when I just need to do it, I'll do it and get off. Because sometimes I do check DMs, or when people like ask me to do the resumes, I always say email me, but people don't email. So like they don't read everything. People don't follow instructions. Cool. So like that's kind of why I would get on, and I would like voice out like, talking like engagements like you and I are doing about
Mm-hmm.
things I feel like, need to be said, or my opinion, and just stuff like that, or things I want to share and pass on to wisdom. And so me setting this like boundary of mine, I just need to do it for myself. And maybe I'll miss out on people DMing me, but like it's just gonna help me so much better, because I don't want to be someone that feels like they need to like, I guess, prove themselves or feel validated of their business, or if my book's worthy or not, because I was starting to do that. I was starting to feel like, okay, like get this book, get this book. I know it's gonna like do a lot of good things. Like I'm 25, like I don't know everything, but like read about it, because I know people think that what looks good, like she just always had a good, like, no, like I really like people need to open up and really like understand, like no one is going to come save you. I thought people were going to save me because I don't know, I had that idea until my saving came from like having to do things I didn't want to do, having to see things for what it is. And so I was like, you know what, I can't push someone to read a book, I can't push someone to go in the gym or sign up for this class, and yes, it's going to take an investment. And so at the end of the day, I want to remove myself from that, because I was letting myself get frustrated because of someone else's issues being projected or portrayed on me, of issues they need to fix for themselves, not because I need to do the fixing. So if someone doesn't want to get their fitness together, that's on them. I can't like share all these motivational things 24/7 and still reach out to them. No, like I can do my part, but they got to do their part too. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So like if I'm like, you know what, I want to guide you and get my book because you're asking about book recommendations, I'm going to, tell my story. There's too much, to talk about on a phone call. Get this book, whatever, there's audio, whatever. And I can't tell someone to do it. I can't really like, ship it to their house. They got to like put the order confirmation in and do it. So like there's just things that I didn't really think about until a couple days ago. I really got into thinking, because like when I have a like the vision mode, like when I'm like locked in, I'm like locked in. I'm ready to like, hey, how am I going to execute 2024 like on a different level than I did last year? And so I get to reflecting, I get to planning, I get to goal like mapping out and all that. And so it became like, you know what? I'm gonna put a boundary and not go on social media. I gotta do what's good for me, because I did a lot for 2023. Like, and like we're just getting started. Like what? It's January 7th. Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's that's crazy. So like if I can sacrifice that little, like imagine the rest of the year, the months. So I'm
Right.
not going to feel bad because someone doesn't want to see what I have to offer. You know, I can post, I can share things, I can get on a 5-minute phone call and see like where you're at, how can I help and all that, but I can't like honestly do it You know, I
Mhm.
want to help people when I can't save everyone because I can't do that. It takes someone to want to do it. So I put a boundary where, like, what issues people have, it doesn't have to become my issue.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
I have my own issues, you know, like I'm not perfect. Life is crazy. And so I had
Mhm.
to like make that boundary and enforce it. And I'm doing that. And I'm excited to see how it goes because I want to continue living peace. I don't want to start my year off crazy and all these things. Like, no, I want to start out a way where it's going to end pretty great, you know?
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you set boundaries, do
Hmm.
you find it is easier for people to know where you're coming from the very first beginning? Um, I know sometimes people have boundaries, but then they get kind of loose with the boundaries when they meet new people because, well, I don't know this person. This person doesn't really know me. So let's get to know each other, and then they can kind of reinforce the boundary. When you set boundaries in the beginning and then people then are introduced, you're introduced to people, do you find it easier that the boundaries already set and you stick with it and you kind of judge whether that person's in it for it or not, or do you play loose with that when you first?
Yeah. Wow, I didn't really think about that. That's a really good like reflection. I'm thinking like, wow, I didn't look at it like that. I think well, I'm not gonna say I think. I know for me is that I used to play it loosely until I no longer had a boundary no more. Because I played it loosely where like no it no longer existed.
Hmm.
So if I don't place that boundary right from the beginning, okay, well, it doesn't have to be a boundary anymore, depending on like how things work or whoever it is that you're putting that boundary on. But if I keep it loosely, like it might not end up being a boundary. Like I might not be something like now it's like, hey, like, well, I thought I was having a boundary. Now it's like, why'd I even allow that to just let it be? Like, you know? So if I don't
Hmm.
play it from the beginning, like that's where a lot of people are fearful. Like, I don't want to be like me. And you're not being
Right.
me.
Right.
Like, and I was that person. Oh my gosh. If I could talk to my younger self, like I'd be like, why would you like care about that? And that's then again caring what other people think. It's
Hmm.
not being because I don't go around like thinking that person's mean. I'm just like, well, that is what their boundary is. Like I can't like make them feel bad about that. Like that's not fair because I want someone to feel make me feel bad about my own boundaries. And so yes, I definitely believe that if you don't enforce it at the beginning, like you're going to end up like it's not going to be no longer a boundary where it's just going to be something that you just threw out there and then it's up in the air. But if you
Hmm.
are not playing it loosely, like, yeah, like it's going to become better for your stuff, whatever outcome it is that you're trying to achieve from it.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think a lot of times, I see a lot of people.
Hmm.
I'm a social media watcher. I go down the rabbit hole and I'm looking at people's posts, and you see stuff on different groups and different forums. And I see a lot of people, they're upset with a friendship or a family member that's done this, and I just want to know, the first question I want to know is like, did you establish it in the beginning? Is it something that you set in stone from the very start? I will not do this. Or did you let it happen once, twice,
Yeah.
three times, four times, and then try to put a stop to it? And then that person's already, well, this is established. We've already done this. Why should I stop now? They don't understand your side of it. They just see what the situation was from the very start. Well, this is the relationship we had. Now it's a problem. It's a problem for you. It's not a problem for me. So then they still try to break that boundary that you set. And that's the kind of the first question I always want to ask when I read a post about a family member or a friend is like, when was the boundary set? Because if it's set in the beginning and everybody knows, then there's really no problem for you. You shouldn't be on social media venting about it because it's your boundary. If they broke it, then let them go vent about it and be mad because you didn't do this and that.
Hmm.
But a lot of times I see that the person that it happened to is venting about it. And it's like, did you establish that boundary in the beginning? Because if you had, I don't think you would be so upset. you would be at peace because this is what I said in the beginning. You broke it, that's on you. You can say what you want, be mad if you want. And as a business owner, that was me in the beginning. I didn't want to tell people no. I don't want to tell people no because I don't want to be that known as that personal trainer who says, well, he won't work with you.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't work with me. So then, I'm up extremely early in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
staying really late at night. My days are 13, 14 hours long. And then trying to go home and be a parent and be a husband and trying to squeeze all that in gets overwhelming
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't set the boundary in the beginning.
Yeah.
Then when you try to set that boundary, well, I can't meet at this time. Then you start to lose clients. Then you start to feel bad about yourself. Now I'm losing clients, and this is happening, and the business is not going great. And you start to question. But had I set that in the beginning, these are the hours of operation. If I can't meet, then I'm not good for you, and so be it. Might not have went through that struggle.
Yeah, and there's times where I told myself like, okay, I have boundaries, but a boundary doesn't exist unless that person knows about it.
Right.
Like, it's not a boundary. If whatever it is that you're having a boundary on for that person, it doesn't exist. They don't even know what that boundary is because you haven't told them what, So again, that's why it's like being straightforward because hey, at least you like brought it to their attention. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
cool. You let it all out. What, you know? Yeah, if you it's not a boundary unless they know. And I think that's
Yeah.
also oh, I have a boundary that um this is not. And then when it happens, you let that happen. So you didn't voice
Mm-hmm.
something out, but you talk about boundaries. So that's also too like I'm not afraid to say how I feel. Of course, I'm not gonna be disrespectful. I'm just gonna tell you how I feel. I think that people are afraid to like use their voice. It doesn't have to be always disrespectful. I see that too on social media. That's why I'm also taking a break. Like you said, I'm a social media watcher. You be seeing what people be posting in groups. It's like, okay. Also, a boundary, it's not a boundary if you let social media know and not the source. I
Yes, exactly.
feel
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
you really, that's why we're both laughing because we're like, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Oh shoot, sorry, but no, seriously, like you think someone's gonna see what your post, and I don't see everyone's post. You
Mm-mm.
might be thinking, oh, they're gonna see my post. They got their notifications on my post set up. No, they probably don't. And if they did, maybe they still didn't check it. So
Mm-hmm.
again, that's not a boundary if it doesn't come from the source, meaning it's not on the phone call, it's not in a text, face to face. Telling a friend about it and then telling them to tell them no. They come from you and who it is going to.
Mm-hmm. Right,
Because
right, right.
I took a break on social media too, especially like during this like beginning of the year because I was the same thing like what you be doing, looking at social media because I don't react. Sometimes I want to say something, but I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
Claire, hold your tongue because
Yeah,
I'm like, you know what? No, they gotta figure that out. You might
yeah.
want to like just voice how you feel because that's kind of like Facebook, social media. It's like a big blog with your own idea of how you feel
Mm-hmm.
about what you know.
Right.
And I don't want to do that. I don't, so again, I limit myself from that. So I took it off immediately because what you just said, the social media watching, I'd be seeing like going to social media about something how you feel is definitely not going to help. You're still going to be in the same repeated cycle.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be afraid to tell someone how I usually feel. Like it was a friendship. I was always beating around the bush. I don't know why, like now reflecting on it, because we're still good friends. But at that time, it was just a lot of drama, unnecessary. And it became a problem that could have just, been done with maybe in a conversation. But I always felt like I couldn't speak. And so that showed me that boundary of not talking or hanging out made me have the ability to speak up for myself because it was like I felt like she was trying to speak on me a lot of how I felt, but she never took the time to let me say how I felt from who I am. And so that helped me realize, okay, if now I have a problem with anyone, I can be an adult and have a healthy conversation. Even if I don't agree with that person, I can still have a conversation. I can have hard conversations because I have boundaries where, like, maybe I'm not going to have a conversation. If I'm really angry, I'm going to control my emotions. How I do that is by giving myself time to gather my thoughts, and then I'm going to come back and have a conversation. I'm not going to ignore that. I used to ignore, be like, I'm mad, that person just pissed me off. Okay. No, like, let me do it in a better way as an adult. And so, again, the boundary of, like, hey, like, if you're mad at me, I don't want to talk right now, because anger doesn't help things and emotion. It just arises, and we don't want that. We want to stay in a mellow tempo. And so, again, that's boundary. Like, hey, anything that people are yelling, like the boundary of mine, like, I can't do that. I have to be in a peaceful setting, so, like, I know how to communicate in a good way where, like, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it does. Yeah, like we said in the very beginning, boundaries are for peace, and you have to create your own boundaries. You have to enforce them. You have to be willing to have those hard conversations when somebody does cross that boundary. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a big part of it too. The conversation aspect. A lot of people do not like confrontation, and a conversation is not always confrontation.
Mm-hmm.
A
Exactly.
conversation can be a difference of opinion and still be a conversation without it being confrontation. But I think a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people just think that if I disagree with you, it's going to be a confrontation instead of just a simple, hey, let me explain to you why this is not something that I do. We'll talk about it so that you understand it. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. You at least know where I stand so that when it happens and I say, not talking about it, or I walk away, you know why. It, it can be as easy as that,
Mm-hmm.
but we can make it so hard by avoiding just that simple sit down explanation, because you're entitled to an explanation. You're entitled to how you feel. Somebody doesn't have to like it, but you're entitled to it.
Yeah.
And understanding that in every relationship, whether it be the relationship between your boss at work or your best friend or a client or anybody, understanding that your boundary is important to how you feel and your peace, and being able to have those conversations to establish it is the most important part. I think the conversation part is the big thing that's missing, because in our heads we like, yeah, I got a boundary and not gonna cross it. Then somebody does, and you don't know how to handle it. You're just kind of like, that wasn't supposed to happen, but it did happen, and now you have to address it. But are
Yeah.
you going to? And a lot of people don't. They just like, well, I have a boundary, and this person broke it. And I'm going to go to social media and I'm going to tell everybody about it. Can you believe this person? Did you have the conversation with them?
Mm-hmm.
Did you explain why it bothered you? Do you explain why you have the boundary, so that they know from this point on, don't let it happen again? Because if you don't have that conversation, it's going to happen again. And where are you going to run to again?
Mm-hmm.
Social media or whoever. And
Mm-hmm.
this person's never going to even know until you have the conversation. And it could be, it happens 10 times. And it could have stopped after that first time if you just would have been like, hey, can we sit down and talk?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where it's like, let's sit down and talk. Let's air this out. Let's come to understanding. Let's come to agreement. Now, this is where the part, I think, when you put the boundary and it seems like someone doesn't get it and it's not making sense to them, because this is the part where it's hard, because now
Mm-hmm.
that boundary that you have, you're going to now readjust that boundary for that person because they
Mm-hmm.
don't get it, but you're like trying to still communicate, and now you're like, is that boundary too like complicated? Then you're gonna
Ooh.
readjust it and change it. Now you're still not satisfied, and that person is though. So you're really just help that person because they wanted not to do the hard work. They wanted, like, it to, I don't know, be easier, and so they just
Mm-hmm.
needed that, I guess. But again, that's another part. You can have a boundary and it's still you're messing it up because now you're changing it up to fit that person,
Mm-hmm.
their expectations, their needs and wants. Now you're forgetting about yours. So again, there you are. That's not a boundary no more.
Right.
That's
Right.
that one because we might be, let's say we communicate a boundary to someone. All right, so hold on. I'm gonna okay. This is something that I see a lot with on my platform on Instagram about dating and single and all that. I'll speak on this because I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to get a different one, but I can't think to figure that out. I'm gonna do this one. I have a boundary. We're going to not sleep at each other's places. I don't care if we're best friends and we're pursuing each other until I'm in a relationship. That is going to wait, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say this. All right, so I communicated that with that person. Okay, that's good. I'm glad. Yeah, I'm glad that we have that. We're really taking this serious. I see that. Okay, but then let's say, for example, oh well, we had planned to go on a date. We know that we might have drinks and food. You know a boundary that I have set in motion. You're gonna make me feel bad because now you have this drive home.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
I have a home where there's a couch that you can easily sleep at.
Mm-hmm.
But if I don't be like, no, okay, well, then I'm going to feel bad and let myself, everything else take over, like whatever other dates I have or whatnot. So again, just because I'm accommodating someone else's like situation right now doesn't mean I have to forget my boundary.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what it is. I don't care if you guys are just good friends. If your boundary is like you don't feel comfortable, like you should stand on that. I don't know, like I just think that we're so easy going like, well, like, you know, we won't do anything and you know, we're gonna be smart, but just like no, it's like if you let that boundary go for one time, you're gonna let that happen over and over after time.
Mm-hmm.
You might not think that, but anything that you do, like you let go one time, will happen again. You're gonna let go
Mm-hmm.
the second time because you're like, well, I did it before. I guess I'll
Mm-hmm.
do it again. And next thing you know, the again part, it's like 10 times you already done it. You already did it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you let slide.
Right.
And so,
Right.
like, I have realized that if they don't understand that boundary, you have to walk away. You're accepting reality. You're
Mm-hmm.
accepting that they don't want to respect that boundary. Someone else out there is going to be okay with not having that boundary that you place in motion. They will find that person or those people that will be okay with whatever they feel okay is, you know. But if you don't
Mm-hmm.
feel okay about it, don't feel okay about it. Don't
Right.
reason with someone to like, well, how about this? How about that? Like, no, there's no ifs or what. Like, this is what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sorry. I got very,
Absolutely.
like, it's so
No.
stupid. Let me not say stupid because we're not perfect. I've been there before, but it's like, don't accommodate a boundary for someone. Like, there's no accommodation in boundaries. The boundary is set in motion, like, boom. Like, you can't try to, like, wiggle your way through. No,
Mm-hmm.
boundaries, are you going to get over? Okay, cool. Get over. If you're not getting over. So maybe go find a different somewhere else, you know, a different path. This one is
Yeah.
obviously not working.
Right. And it's human nature too, right? So if you, the individual, say, well, okay, just this one time, even if you have the conscious determination to say this is the one time it's only going to happen, it's only going to happen once, that person, other person, human as they are going to wait. Well, you let it happen once, right? What's wrong with it? What's wrong with it now? You did it once and nothing happened, so what's wrong with that? And it's going to make you question, even in that circuit, even if you try to hold firm to it again, they're still going to make you question
Yep.
the boundary itself because okay, you let it happen once and nothing happened. So what's the problem with it happening again and again and again? And like you said, if you let it happen once, that person then did not respect the boundary in itself anyway. They knew where you stood, and yet they still pushed it to see if they could get past the boundary.
Mm-hmm.
So if you let it happen once, they're going to try it again. And again, this is going to cause conflict and anyway.
Yeah.
So Boundaries are for peace, understanding. I don't do this unless we're in a serious relationship.
Mhm.
This is date one. Why are we even talking about it? This shouldn't even be. You know that this was the plan. We were going to eat, have drinks. You should have had a way home, Uber, drive yourself, whatever.
Yep.
You knew this wasn't going to happen. So yeah, you have to stand firm on those, and you
Mhm.
can't. There's no wiggle room. If it's a boundary, stick to it. The people that you really need and want in your life will see it as a sign of respect. This person respects themselves enough to have this boundary. I'm going to respect the boundary, and then in turn understand that they're respecting themselves. I want a person that respects themselves. I don't
Yeah.
want somebody who kind of just goes with it because it's not going to turn out good anyway.
No, yeah. Um, and that I see boundaries. I used to like think it was so like it's so big though, and it like really shapes your life if you have
Mm-hmm.
good boundaries. Because here's my thing. Let's talk about this. Because you can have a boundary, but it's a good boundary.
Mm-hmm. True.
Yeah,
That's true.
you might think, oh, I have boundaries. Okay, but what are they though?
Yeah.
Well, but also that also depends like what that person wants has going on. So then I'm not going to reason because I'm not even going to try to like shoot out advice because that's your boundaries. I can't tell you what to do. That's
Mm-hmm.
also where like I'm taking that break from social media because you want advice to help you, but your boundaries aren't good boundaries though. Like you can
Right.
have bad boundaries for real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so um that's also when it comes to like the boundary that you're initiating on that person, you're not a boundary doesn't just like, you know what, I just feel like putting a boundary on Chris or Samantha. Like there's a reason why the boundary is trying to be in place. It's because something that that person is adding and doing in your life, their behavior and the treat like how they're treating you, like a boundary is placed. So because there's a reason behind it, you know? And so again, it's your responsibility to place that boundary. Otherwise, they're going to that's where the controlling happens. Again, if you don't have boundaries, they're controlling you.
Mm-hmm.
People always talk about, oh, manipulation and control and all that. Well, you have to set stuff in motion right now, like, and you can't debate or rebuttal, like, no.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're allowing that person to have control. So that's on you at that point.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely.
control, someone
Absolutely.
feeds off control. So when you don't have a boundary, that person is going to be like, oh, yeah, I can control this person. I can control their judgment, their decision making, because you're allowing that. When you have boundaries, it's like, oh, shoot, like, I can't even mess with that person. I'm gonna go mess with someone else I can like probably have more control over that I can get by
Mm-hmm.
on, you know?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep. Yeah. There are people that, like you said, that thrive on that.
Yeah.
That what makes them feel good about themselves.
Mhm.
If they can come into a relationship or a friendship and they can control the situation, they control what happens when you do something, how you respond to something, that makes them feel good about themselves. It hurts you in the long run. And
Yeah.
then you're wondering, I don't understand why this person treats me like this. Well, it's because you allowed it. It's
Yeah.
very easy to stop it.
Yeah.
You can have the conversation, you can set the boundary. That person will then probably choose to leave if they can't control you. If they can't do the things they want, they will choose to leave. It and it's not always, it doesn't always feel good because you may really like this person. This
Yeah.
person may have given you, may bring something into your life that you love, but the bigger picture is it's more detrimental than good. The boundary, if you hold it in place, will establish if that person is good or is bad for you.
Yeah. That's really that's good. What you just said was I think that like it's just what it is, just straightforward. Like, hey, if they after a while it just seems like a boundary isn't you can have that sit down talk and you can still bring it up, you know, here and there. It seems like it's not getting to them at that point. Like it's not cutting that person out completely, just like you're gonna have to give yourself time away from that person. Maybe they need to have their own space to figure out that, do some like self-reflecting, look in the mirror, look at their choices, their behavior, all that. Because
Mm-hmm.
the more that you focus on like why are they not getting it, the more you're forgetting why you're even putting that boundary on the first place.
Yeah. Yes. It's like you said in the beginning. You can't control people. I
Hmm.
talk about fitness 24/7. All my posts about fitness and mental health and physical health. I can't make you do it. And if I focus on, well, I didn't get any likes, then nobody really understands what I'm trying to say and
Hmm.
nobody gets it. That's not why I posted it in the first place. I posted
Exactly.
it because it's something I believe in and I'm putting it out there. I can't force you to read it, can't force you to like it, can't force you to listen to it, but I'm putting it out there because it will reach somebody. And that person
Hmm.
that it does reach is the reason I put it out there.
Yeah, it just takes one person. That's like when like the whole social media thing. I used to be like that too. It's like, okay, so why isn't everyone understanding this? But I realized that it takes one person to get it, and that's all that matters. You did what you're supposed to be doing. Also, a lot of people don't want to understand what you're talking about. People are
Mm-hmm.
so crowded in their own judgment, they don't even realize the good judgment they think is actually bad judgment.
Mm-hmm.
So again, that's where I'm like, you can't fix a lot of people's minds, you know, because
Mm-hmm.
again, we can be adults, like we have adult bodies. We're 30 and whatever, and we're in the gym, and we can't be like who we were at when we were 21 years old. Like like our bodies are changing. However, you can still have a child's mind in the way
Right.
you think and how you treat other people.
Mm-hmm.
So that shows also, again, a positive thing later on, that you don't have to deal with someone like that in your life. If someone can't respect you, when what you think they're going to respect you when you have more things, more money, bigger house, all these things? No, they don't respect you now. They're not going to respect you later.
Right.
You're going to have whatever things that you're going to increase on and upgrade in your life will come with a bigger boundary. This boundary is because of the things that's happening in your life right now in the season. When you go to the next season, another upgrade, that boundary will have to be changed because it's
Mm-hmm.
going to come with more. So again, I look at it like, you know what? That's on them. They missed out on a blessing. They missed out on an opportunity. That's on them. Maybe someone else is a better opportunity for them, whatever it is they're trying to strive and do. Cool. I'm not focusing on that because
Mm-hmm.
as long as I continue with my boundaries and what I have in motion, I'm going to be great. I'm going to be blessed. And again, that's how I had to look at it. Like what we want more of. Like I don't have one boundary. I have like 10 boundaries because it's
Mm-hmm.
in different levels. Because again, if I'm asking for more, if I'm working to go get it for these things, like I got to realize, okay, for example, I want this beach house. Okay. Well, I don't want someone that likes to be immature and invite all these like crazy, like not crazy people, but like the immaturity, right? They're not going
Mm-hmm.
to respect the stuff that you worked hard for. They didn't respect when you had the little apartment.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I allowing that person to come when I had this like beach house and all this? No, I don't want more damage. I
Right.
want less damage. Again, I want peace. I don't
Mm-hmm.
want more destruction.
Right.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's how I look at it.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Great way to look at it. Great way to look at it. Yeah. Boundaries. Like I said, when I came into this kind of, you sent over this idea to talk about, once again, I was kind of like, okay, what am I going to say? Like, I'm like, I understand boundaries, but how can I speak on boundaries? And the more that I thought about it, I realized that I have more boundaries in place for my own peace than I
Mhm.
thought that I had. I don't tolerate a lot of stuff, and people know that about me. So if you come into my life and you cross that boundary, I let you know immediately, hey, doesn't work for me. We can talk about it, we can discuss it, but it doesn't work for me. And I may not hear from those people ever again, but that's my peace. I'm good with that. And I
Mhm.
didn't really, really understand that until I started really thinking about this week. Okay, what am I going to say? Well, yeah, I do that. Yeah, we got boundaries here, boundaries there, and boundaries are everywhere. And as long as you have them in place, you and everything that you want to achieve are really in sight and you're comfortable with the process of it. It's when I see a lot of stuff on social media and I, I'm I'm in a bad place. Well, you're in a bad. Why are you in a bad place? I'm sure it's because of input from somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
If you had that boundary in place, that input may affect you, but not to the point where you're in a bad place. We have to have boundaries. If we don't have them, we don't establish them in the beginning, we don't tell the person, we don't communicate that, then we're affecting our own peace. If we affect our own peace, that's when we get in our bad place because now we're starting to question, why didn't this person understand? Why didn't this person listen? Why didn't this person accept me for who I am? It's because we didn't set the boundaries in the beginning and hold firm to them. Either we established them and they broke them. Oh, we'll let it slide this one time. One time turns into 10 times, and now we're questioning the boundary itself, but we never even talked about it in the beginning.
Yeah, and that's one thing too. Like you gotta take accountability. A boundary was broken because you allowed it. You can't be mad at someone else because they broke it. You let yourself. Yeah, it's like you're mad now at that person, but you shouldn't be mad at yourself. Like just you can be yes, your feelings are valid. You can be mad at that person, but you allowed it to happen though. So
Right.
that's where like I kind of get very serious mode and I can be very like serious, but also like I'm cool, laid back. But when it comes to like stuff like this, I get very serious about because I let all that stuff slide and it's like I you can't be mad at anyone. You're making Facebook posts or on Instagram stories, you want people to like, dang girl, are you serious? Or dang man, like she really did that, or like, no way, they playing with you. Like they got over on you like that, and you want people to feel bad for you. But
Mm-hmm.
why? You did it to yourself.
Yep.
You gotta just be more like straight up. You gotta not feel bad about things that will make you feel better in the long run.
Right. Yep.
That you don't want to put boundaries and still feel bad about it. No, you
Right.
put the boundary in place so you can feel good about like, oh wow, I don't like have all that stress or discomfort. I feel at peace. I can like relax. I can like settle and just be like just in the moment. I'm not worried about, oh gosh, like the future because I allowed that happen and now I don't know what's gonna come because now the boundary is no longer there and like you're just freaking out. Like, no, I don't want to go through that, especially not in 2024. So
Right.
yeah, I started to realize the more boundaries, the more things I don't have. Okay, the more boundaries I place, the more situations I don't even have to deal with. That's how I look at it. Because a
Yep.
lot of situations, I'm like, what the, you know? And so
Right.
I don't have to deal with that. So again, I'm putting the boundary. I
Yep.
realized that because I took the boundary out, and I'm like, wait, why did I just not continue doing that? And then I'm like, you know what? I'm not going through that again. You realize when you hear people's conversations, like, I'm not dealing with that person. I'm not going through that situation again. Okay. So, how are you not going to go through that situation again? It comes from a boundary, though, for you realizing what took place for that to occur. So, then
Mm-hmm.
when it does come to you, because things are going to come to you again that you've been through before. So, like, how
Yep.
do you change that so you don't have to relive that? Why would we want to relive the same things over and over that we already learned? Again, right? You know what I'm saying? That's how I look at
Right.
it. So again, like more things can be differently, so it can come out a different outcome than before.
Yep. Yep.
That's
Absolutely.
me having a deep, like my mind just gets very deep into that. I know some people like I can't have conversations like that, so I don't talk about like this kind of how we're going because I know that. So I'm not even gonna like care to even explain that. But when it comes to like-minded people, when we have conversations like this, and I'm not saying if you don't understand, like, oh, like you're behind or you're dumb and all that, because I know people like will take your words and twist and no, like I'm not perfect. I still have to learn. I'm still reading books. I'm doing all that. Because I've done boundaries and then I next week like didn't stand on that boundary. So the reason I say that because life doesn't have to feel exhausting. We don't have to go through out like situations because sometimes the things that we go through Like we allowed ourselves to go through that. Not
Mhm.
like, oh, the devil's after me. Like, no, like you had a choice to allow yourself to not go through something that you went through before. You know better. You just gotta do better.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yep. Yep. There's a Will Smith quote that I live by, and it's your happiness, your peace is your responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And
There is.
I, I love that because it truly, you're going to get input all the time. People you
Mhm.
meet, family, relationships, there's always input. But your peace, your happiness is your responsibility.
Yeah.
And if people set the boundaries, create that peace, create that happiness, then it's easier to share that happiness with somebody else. No, nobody can come into your world and truly make you happy. They make you feel better
Mm-hmm.
about whatever. When you set the boundaries and you're in peace and you're happy, then you attract people who are at peace and are happy. And then you share that happiness together.
Yeah.
And that is what boundaries do.
Mm-hmm.
They attract the people that respect you, understand you, and know that, okay, I can't control this person. I can't get over on this person. She's not going to allow it. He's not going to allow it. That gives me peace because now I know where I stand with this person. This person knows where I stand, and then you can grow together from that point. Without boundaries and without holding to the boundaries, you become a different person than what you initially established. And that can create a lot of conflict and a lot of problems because who you were in the beginning is not who you are now. And that person doesn't see you as the person you were in the beginning, even though you want to go back to that person. They see you are who you are now. And you can't change that person's mind. So holding true to who you are, what you're about, why you can't cross this boundary will dictate who then comes into your life and you can kind of share that
Mm-hmm.
happiness with.
Yeah. Good boundaries help remove people that aren't supposed to be in your life
Yes.
without you having to cause arguments and
Yes.
chaos.
Yes.
Easily. A boundary will remove people that you don't need in your life that just can't be around you. So
Mm-hmm.
you're helping yourself out from dealing with like things that just don't need to be a part of your life. So again, bad boundaries keep bad company.
Yeah.
so
Absolutely.
so you have to be actually self-aware, like, is this a good boundary? Or are you playing it safe?
Mm-hmm.
Because again, like I said before, I'll say that like good boundaries, I know the boundaries I have, the people respect it. Those are people that I want in my life. Now, the people that don't respect me aren't in my life. Easy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not easy at first, but it's easier as you practice it and you really take care of yourself, like you keep working on yourself, you realize it gets easier. At first it's like, I don't know if I can handle this. I don't know, like, are they gonna be mad at me? Are they gonna hate me and all that? You're worrying about so much about them, not about you.
Right.
Your ultimate job in this world, again, like the Will Smith quote about, your peace and happiness is your responsibility. Yes, that's your sanctuary. Whatever it is that brings you peace and happiness is how you're going to look at life,
Mm-hmm.
and how you're going to go through life. So that's on you. The choice is yours, how you want to go about your life. Again, no one can tell you how you should live your life, what you should do, because that's opinions and you don't want to listen to that. The outsiders, what really matters is like and sometimes I think too, people struggle with boundaries because they don't even really know their own happiness. So they
True.
don't even know what they should even consider a boundary because they
True.
don't realize what their happiness is. And maybe they know a little bit, but again, they're so caught up on someone else or other people or distracted or social media or what they have. That's how I should have it. So I think too, people are running around because they don't really have a sense of their own happiness. So, how are you supposed to instill a boundary to remain your happiness and your cup full if you don't even do that for yourself? You
Right.
know, how do you go about that? That's a good question. Like, how do you find your happiness? No one, I can't tell you what your happiness should be because you might be like reading books. I is not gonna make me happy. Reading books makes Sinclair happy, you know. So things like
Mhm.
that. That's where I don't. I can't remember. I feel like we had like a lot of crazy topics that intertwine. So like self love and stuff too. Like
Mhm.
to have a boundary take place, you have to love yourself. In order to love
Absolutely.
yourself, what are you doing that you are happy about? What makes you, when you think of love, what is love to you? Like, you know, it's
Mhm.
not like, oh, the romance movie, Nicholas Sparks books and all that. No, like, what do you like? It could be like in the gym, like a gym just brings me like that love feeling. Like, you know, like these flowers give me love, like just stuff like that, you know? So
Mhm.
again, that's also a difficult thing. Like we talk about boundaries in this generation society, but really how you know a boundary is that like how do you feel about yourself? How do you portray yourself? Like what do you think about yourself is too, because you might be thinking like you're not a good person or you're negative. So of course there's nothing good that you're going to come out of that. How are you going to
Mhm.
find a better way through life when you don't even first know what, I don't know, like, do you see what I'm kind of going
Yeah.
with?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I used to like
Yeah.
be negative as heck, and so of course I never had boundaries. Why would I even have boundaries? It's like that doesn't even make sense. I'm having boundaries so I can protect myself from all crazy and evilness out here. Because again, a while ago when we first started this podcast tonight was this episode about how you said you thought your friends, your close friends and family would support your business until you realized they didn't. So now you have a boundary like, hey, like I can't do the family friends discount. I gotta treat you like everyone else. That's a
Mhm.
boundary, right? Because
Mhm.
that's a thing, the employee and friend discount. Well, not right now. Like, you know, so
Right.
again, there's things at the beginning you didn't realize until later on during the journey that you're like, okay, that makes sense. I had to do that for a reason
Mhm.
because you
Yeah.
fell in love with the process of starting your business and following what's, you know, being true to yourself, what it is that you love, like helping others, serving others, but also you fell in love with the gym because you can't fall in love with someone else's health journey if you don't fall in love with yours. You know,
Right.
you can't
Right.
give guidance or, you know, support and resources if you didn't give yourself that from the beginning.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, like you said, we talk about a lot of subjects that are intertwined, and I
It
think
does.
this starts to lead into that self love
Yeah.
conversation.
Mhm.
And I think we definitely need to have that conversation next. It's something that I wanted to talk about for a long, long time,
Okay.
but it's hard to find people to talk about with
Mhm.
because
Oh, yeah,
just
for
because
sure.
people have different opinions. But I think this is a good time to stop because I think we are starting to trend over into that self love conversation. And I think that is definitely the next topic we need to talk about because it's getting there. Because boundaries is self love. I mean, that's what it
Yeah.
is. You hit it right on the head, and we could talk for about probably another 3 hours about
Oh, yeah.
self love itself. But once again, we're going to call it quits for this moment because we are journeying into our next topic, and the next topic is going to be a good topic. Something that I think a lot of people need to really understand. Self love is probably the most important aspect of it, but I think it's such a general. The word is used so generally now that
Mhm.
we don't really dive into what it truly means to love
Yeah.
yourself. So definitely, next
Yeah.
conversation. Give me a week to think about it.
No, you're good. No, for sure. I think it's really funny though because I want to do self love, but I'm glad I did boundaries because I don't write notes. I don't do all of that. Like how, like I just make a conversation because otherwise I feel like it doesn't flow. I'm just not being
Mm-hmm.
authentic. So I'm glad it just hit the spot. Like the ending was just like boom. Like that was
Right.
good because I was
Yes,
like,
it was.
that was a good ending.
Yes,
Like
it
ending of the
was.
book. Like, next book.
Right, right. All right. Well, we're going to call it for tonight. But thank everybody who popped in. I saw about 3 or 4 people pop in and listen for a few seconds. Hopefully, if you heard something that you liked, this will be released on podcast, Apple Podcast, and Spotify Podcast tomorrow at noon. So if you want to go back and listen to something that you might have heard and didn't understand, or you have questions, reach out to one of us. We would love to hear from you. Like, we have a lot to say, and the next episode should be a really good episode. So thank you, Sinclair, for joining us. Thank you, everyone, and we will see you next week.
All right. Good night.
All right, good night.
See you next week.
All right.